Shalom, this is Rabbi Dov Linzer of Yeshivat Chovei Torah Rabbinical School, and I'd like to share with you a thought on this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha is Chayei Sarah, and a major theme of Chayei Sarah is the question about insiders and outsiders, how we relate to the larger country around us, and also how we relate to the idea about foreigners, something very relevant in thinking about the whole question of immigrants and what they bring to the society. Is there something to be feared or something to be embraced? And of course, the Parsha starts with Avram trying to get a burial plot, and part of the challenges that he has is that he's seen as an outsider, not as a citizen of society. The Parsha then turns to Avraham looking for a wife for Yitzchak. And he is very clear that he does not want that wife to be found from the people of the land in which he lives. This could be seen as an issue that's hostile to the sort of host country, but it also reflects the reality that Avraham is a stranger, he's a minority. Jews have always experienced a sense of being a minority in a larger host country, and the fear of assimilation, the fear of losing oneself of identity. And he wants to stick within his own family. So he sends his servant to find a wife for Yitzchak from his own family that lives outside of the land of Canaan. And a fascinating thing that we see is that when the servant comes back with Rivka, that Rivka actually represents a different type of society with different types of norms, which actually get embraced within our understanding of ourselves and within the people of Israel and future generations. Because when the servant goes there, he seems to encounter a society which is not so patriarchal, which is not all about the father and the father's household. The father of Yitzchak, of Rivka, Betuel, is almost hidden from the scene. When Rivka goes back to speak to her family, she goes to Beit Imah, which is not just the literal house of her mother, but it seems to be her mother's household, that the household is defined in terms of the mother. And commentators have said that it seems that society was not so patriarchal, was to certain degrees matriarchal, not that necessarily the women had power, but that their status was greater and that the household was defined in terms of the women. And there we find that this is reflected later when they're ready to marry off Rivka, and Rivka's brother and mother actually say, "Let us nishlcha lana rav nishalat piha." Let's find Rivka whether she really wants to go back to be with Yitzchak. And this is shocking because we know the halacha is that a father can marry off his minor daughter. Thank God we don't actually act on that. And we don't find anywhere that he's supposed to get her input. And nevertheless, here they say, let's ask her whether she actually wants to do it. And Rashi quotes the Bereshit Rabbah, which says, we learn from here a principle that you cannot marry off your daughter or cannot send her to be with her husband until she says, yes, I want that man. And Rashi even goes further to say that when she says, I will go, that means even despite what you say, I will go, I will act on my own, and I will go. And this later gets incorporated within halacha, that the halacha actually teaches that not only are you not allowed to have her live with that man, you're not even supposed to do the act of marrying her off, which halacha allows until she says that she wants to marry that person. So we wind up embracing some of this dimension of this outside society, which into our self-understanding of who we are as a people and the values that we embrace. And that's why in next week's Parsha, Rivka goes directly to God and asks God about what the story is with the children that are struggling in her womb. And we know that Hannah speaks directly to God. The role of women directly encountering God is introduced by Rivka. And other dimensions as well we learn from that society, from Rachel and Leah, the status of women in terms of the possibility of inheriting, which is later reflected by Benot Zelofchad, the sort of right of women to have the ketubah, to protect them, which becomes part of the rabbinic literature. There's so much that we wind up embracing and not seeing it as hostile, not seeing it as fundamentally the Jewish religion is about patriarchy. No, that also might be part of the larger society in which we found ourselves. And there are things to find from other societies that actually we can identify, deeply resonate with the values of the Torah, and deeply resonate with our understanding of who we are as a people, with our morality and our ethics. So from this week's Parsha, we understand on the one hand how a minority religion, a minority people might have to create some boundaries to not assimilate. But at the same time, how we have to be open to those that are outside of us, embrace, if you would, the contributions of immigrants, embrace those that bring other dimensions that enrich us, and that actually become part of the Jewish tradition, part of halacha, are identified as values that actually are true to the Torah. Shabbat Shalom.